What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And over the last week, it's kind of hit the news again, right? That those who were facing a death penalty in California are now going to be moved out of San Quentin to what they keep saying is the general population at prisons around the state. A lot of the dudes are not going to the general population, but they are moving out of San Quentin, right? And so I thought we'd rewind a little bit to see how we got here because I feel like there's some shuffling. There's a bit of an okey doke going on. And what do you think the end game is for this, right? Or what I think the end game of this is, because I think it has less to do about the executions and more to do about money, right? And so let's get into it. In 2016, right, voters in California had a choice. First, there was Prop 62, and that was to end the death penalty in California, end all executions. Game over. We're not going to have that, right? The response to that getting on the ballot was Prop 66, right, which the more conservative folks in California put out there. And they said, no, we can fix the death penalty. We shouldn't get rid of it because these dudes need to pay for their crimes and justice and victims and blah, 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 right? Um, so don't take it easy on them. Just get through the process faster and cheaper and more effectively. And so voters had a choice. And Prop 62, which would get rid of the death penalty, lost barely, right? And then Prop 66 won barely. So that's what went into law. And then there was a bunch of lawsuits. But what Prop 66 said was a few things, right? And I'm not going to dive real deep into all the legal stuff, but kind of give you the overview. So it said basically there's another level of court in the appeal process that these petitions should go to. It said that instead of being appointed attorneys with experience in these types of appeals, right? Now, any attorney, whoever accepts cases appointed by the state, so any attorney that becomes court appointed, right, a private attorney, now also has to accept death penalty appeals if they're told to. And then, of course, that's going to mean you have a lot of attorneys that take these cases who don't really know what the hell they're doing because they don't practice this type of law, and then these appeals are going to go faster since they don't know what they're doing. Now we just hurry up and get these folks whacked and move on, right? So that was literally part of the agenda, right? The other part was, hey, these dudes are sitting over here for years and years and years at a time, and they're not making no money, right? They're not paying restitution to their victims, which in reality in California, most victims don't get restitution, right? But most people convicted of crimes are required to pay restitution. So how that works is the money goes into a fund, and that fund is used for lots of stuff. And certain victims that meet certain qualifications will get a little bit of money from that, right? But most of it doesn't go to most victims. Most victims don't qualify for restitution funds. That's kind of a whole nother story. That's a scam in itself, right? To be honest. But because these dudes on death row didn't have jobs, right, within the prison, they didn't earn money, so they weren't able to pay restitution. A lot of them weren't getting money from the streets necessarily. So they said, hey, we got to change that, right? And one of the ways we're going to change that is we're going to move these people off of that environment or give them jobs or whatever. So fast forward, right? That was all under Governor Jay Brown. So Newsom runs for governor, and part of his thing is one of the first things I'm going to do when I'm elected is I'm going to dismantle the facility to execute people in San Quentin, right? So then it's got to be game over. And I can do that by executive order. He gets elected, and that's what he does. True to his word, goes in there. And by early 2019, there was a lot of media coverage around it. The little chair where they give you the hot shot when it's game over gets dismantled, gets taken out of the room. They put a little padlock on the chamber, and that's it, right? Executions are done in California. Now, mind you, the last person that got executed, I'm pretty sure, was Tukey Williams, right? It was that was like early 2006, because I had just come home and they were going through the process of trying to pick the date as I was leaving in December of '05. So that was like early 2006, and so nothing has happened since then, right? In terms of justice, for those that are proponent of the death penalty and say, "Oh, we need justice," keep in mind that the last murder victim who led to somebody being executed was a victim in 1985, I think, maybe 83, right? So uh 40, long time ago, right? That they lost their life. So whoever was waiting for justice for that victim, it was a long wait, right? But so anyways, that's where we are, right? So 2019, the little chamber area gets shut down, and CDC says, hey, we're going to start this pilot program of moving these individuals to other prisons, right? And people were getting moved out of there at least 2021 at the latest was when people started getting moved, right? Because I had heard of a dude from Corcoran or from, Death Row and Quentin, who got transferred to Corcoran in 2021. So this has been happening on like a pilot program level. And what it is they ask people who wants to do it, right? And pick some folks. Now, when they started doing that, you had a lot of people on death row who filed lawsuits real quick and was like, no, you can't move me from here because I will get whacked if you put me out on the yard, right? You can't take me away from here. And you had families who were like, no, we don't want these people to leave San Quentin because most people on death row don't come from the Bay Area, right? Most of them are from Southern California. Orange County in particular has a stupid high rate of sentencing people to death, right? So the victims' families are like, nah, if we'll leave them way up there in San Quentin because we're scared for our families. I don't know. They think the guys are going to get out, or I don't know. Who knows? But so it was a pilot program. It's gone, fairly well from CDC standpoint. And so now they're saying, and this is why it's in the news, that by the end of the summer of this year, they're all going to be gone, right? And so I actually pulled up a list since February 26, 2024. A total of 107 men, right, have been transferred out of San Quentin as a part of the condemned inmate transfer program. Now, there was like 20 women that were also on death row down at the women's prison, and they were all just put out on the yard pretty quickly. So that part of it's over, right? And so the places these people have gone to, right? 4 of them at Centinela. The healthcare place in Stockton got the most at 24. 11 went to Chino, 7 to CMC, 7 to Vacaville, 5 to Corcoran, 3 to High Desert, 5 to Ironwood, 1 to Kern Valley, 1 to LA County, 4 to Mule Creek, 3 went to Pelican Bay, 7 to Donovan, 22 to New Folsom, 3 to Solano, 1 to Salinas Valley, 5 to SATF, and 1 to Wasco, right? So that's where they've all went. But now, what's the deal? I think this is part of the move to close San Quentin as a prison and wind up selling off that property. There's been talk of it for years, right? San Quentin's an incredibly old prison. That's why none of these people that are getting released, even though CDC policies say they have to go to a level 2 security level or above, but it has to be a level 2 with an electric fence. And San Quentin doesn't have a lethal electric fence, right? Because it's an old prison. Same thing like Old Folsom, level 2, but doesn't have the lethal electric fence. And so most of these guys are going to wind up like level 4, 180 yards. Is my thought, right? But regardless, if they don't go to places like Stockton or Vacaville and stuff, like old healthcare places, but so they can't go to Quentin. Newsom has already made clear that he has a desire to shut down prisons, right? Running prisons is expensive. There's not as many people incarcerated in the state of California as there used to be. Um, and Quentin is a particularly expensive prison to run because it's very old, right? That was a knock on Tracy as well. That's why they closed that down, because Tracy's an older prison and worn down. Quentin's a hell of a lot older. But Tracy was just beat up, run down, unnecessary, right? All those things apply to Quentin and the real estate. I don't think that there is a prison in the country that is on more valuable property than San Quentin. Marin County, keep in mind the areas around Quentin, and San Quentin technically is like its own little city, but it's really just the large prison grounds. But Marin County, South Salito over there, all these different places, incredibly wealthy. The views from San Quentin are amazing if you happen to be in a place where you get to see the views. And I think you can from much of the prison. I've only been there for reception. And then when I came home from prison, or I was on my way home from the Bay, I had to stop off over there for a couple of days so my parole officer could pick me up. But like in Quentin, even from our sales and Carson section, you could see the ferry through the windows that are up kind of by the catwalk, right? So your fourth or fifth tier, you kind of see the windows, and you could see the ferry going. When you go out to the yard, the water's right there, right? So it's prime real estate in the Bay Area. And folks have been talking about what could be done with that property if they can just get rid of Quentin. It's really expensive to run and it's really valuable property. So I think that's where this is leading. Nobody's saying that exactly, but that's my thought because the reason you couldn't get rid of Quentin before was because of death row, right? That was the argument. That's the only place where it's set up for capital punishment. That's the only place where it's set up for death row. So you can't move. You could move those facilities to another prison, but that would be very expensive. No community wants that at their prison, right? And the appetite in California is not there for capital punishment, anyways. Even though years back the Prop 62 lost, that get lost by very very small numbers, right? And really it would have won, and it would have abolished the death penalty by voter choice if they hadn't come up with the Prop 66, which said we'll fix it, right? So if people didn't have that option, then they would have just gotten rid of it altogether. Even though that whole we'll fix it thing is really just getting rid of it altogether as well. Because these individuals are not going to be executed, right? They're going to get put out on the yards. Now, what's going to happen to them? A lot of them are going to go to SNY yards, right? You have some folks on death row for like hood stuff, right? Killing other gang members, violence in prison, right? You got people in there that have taken the lives of other people in prison, and that's what got them on death row. So those folks, it's kind of hit and miss. But then obviously you have a lot of very high profile people on there for very high profile, disgusting things. Those individuals are not going to go to the mainland, right? Um, they got to go SNY somewhere. And so it'll be interesting to kind of see what comes of that. There's a lot of people very happy to get off of death row, right, and be able to go out and potentially get contact visits, which they haven't been able to get, and work and walk the chow and just be out on the yard with a bigger group of people, not have to be cuffed up every time you step outside your cell. So there's definitely advantages to being in the general population or to being in some type of a population other than in death row, right? So those guys will make it, and we'll see. But what's going to happen with the other folks? I think they're still going to need a level of protection, and there's a lot of them who again don't want to go out, and they don't even want to go to SNY yards. Also, keep in mind, on average, of one or two people ended their own life every month on death row. A lot of those folks went cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs from being in solitary all that time. Some could argue a lot of them were cuckoo already based on the stuff that they did to get in there. But at minimum, just like in the Bay, in the Shoe, and I'm sure in Corcoran and Tehachapi, right before folks got let out, that solitary confinement conditions broke a lot of people, and it has certainly broken a lot of people on death row. So, are they equipped to go out there, right? You see what happened with Yogi when he went out to the yard in Folsom. Granted, he wasn't on death row, but he was in solitary confinement for what 40 years, right? Effectively, like 40 years. He didn't want to come out to the yard. He didn't want to have nothing to do with nobody. He didn't want no part of none of that, right? Because he was conditioned to be confined to his cell. And you think of the adjustments people coming out of prison need to make to be in society, right? There's another level of adjustment when you're coming from solitary confinement out, back out to the main yard and adjusting to all that. So it'll be interesting for these individuals what happens, right? I'm sure some of them are going to get blasted. Probably some of them are going to end their own lives or, take hot shots or whatever. And others are probably going to adjust and kind of excel in those environments. Again, I don't expect many of them to be on active GP yards, um, but certainly some will, right? Silent was on death row, and he's out on an active GP yard, right? So there are exceptions. But anyways, I think this is all a move to sometime in the next few years close down San Quentin altogether and sell it off to the highest bidder and make a bunch of money, right? Because the state spends a lot to keep it, and they stand to make a lot by getting rid of it. Anyways, there's your update on kind of the people transferring out, what I think of it, and what I think the future of that little almost island that San Quentin is. Uh, what may happen there. So help others move with excellence. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time because you're worth it. Help your community because they need you. And let me know in the comments, man. What do you think? Right, with all this talk of the San Quentin Rehabilitation Center and the Norway model, California model BS. Do you think that's going to help San Quentin stay? Right? Is there an argument to keep the prison, even if the death row is not there? Just let me know in the comments, man. What do you guys think? You think these folks from death row are really going to make it out on these GP yards or even these large S and Y yards? That's what the comments for. Let me know. All right, you guys, take care.